What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on a 2007 Volvo XC90 P2. Today on the P2 behind me, we're going to be covering how to replace your front brakes. One thing I want to make a note of before we even get started is these P2 vehicles were equipped with different size brake discs. So before you go online and order brakes, make sure you know what size rotors your vehicle is equipped with. If you're not sure how to check, please be sure to reach out to our team of experts at service@fcpro.com and provide them with your full VIN, and they'll be able to help you determine what size brake discs you need. Today in front of me we have a set of TRW pads with some Zimmerman rotors. This is one of the kits available on fcpro.com. The TRW ceramic pads come with a new set of anti-rattle clips. These are typically reusable, but it never hurts to have a nice fresh set of some silver anti-rattle clips versus the old corroded ones on your vehicle. These are going to last you anywhere from 30 to 60,000 miles. It really depends on your driving habits. These are heavy vehicles, so you're going to be using the brakes a lot more than you would in a lighter vehicle. A couple of things to look for before you change your brakes is what condition they're in. If you want to do a visual inspection, you can see how much meat is left on the pad. There are special gauges out there that you can use to measure the pads. You also want to look at the brake disc, see if there's any ridges forming on either the inner or outer lip of the disc. If there is, then more than likely you're due for a brake rotor replacement as well. We always recommend you do both hand in hand whenever you're doing a brake job. Now, before we get started on this DIY, let's take a look at some of the tools you're going to need for this job. For this DIY, you're going to need a torque wrench. We have a 1/2-inch drive and a 3/8 drive ratchet. We have a small flathead screwdriver. We have a 19mm lug bolt socket. We have an 18mm socket, a 10mm socket, as well as a 7mm hex. You're going to need some sort of piston retractor tool. Today we're going to be using this unit right here, which will be linked in the description below, along with a caliper hook. If you do not have one of those available, you can use a clothes hanger, a bungee cord, or even a zip tie. The goal here being not to let the caliper hang by the soft line. We have some brake clean, as well as some liquid moly ceramic paste, a paint pen if you want to mark your hardware after you have torqued it down. And then nice to have, especially if you live in the Northeast like we do, is a large hammer. Sometimes the rotors get stuck to the hub on the vehicle, and you're going to need to give them a little percussive encouragement to get them off. Now with that, let's go ahead and get started with this DIY. All right, over at the Volvo, we're going to go ahead and start by removing our anti-rattle clip first. Go ahead and set this to the side. Then with that, we're going to proceed over to the back of the caliper and remove our 2 dust boots that cover our guide pin bolts. The boots are on there tight. Just use a small flathead screwdriver to pry them out. Now we have our dust boot covers off, we can go ahead and work on removing our guide pins. Make sure you have your caliper hook handy, ready to go, or your bungee cord or zip ties, whatever it is that you're working with today. This also takes a 7mm hex for the guide pin bolts. Then we'll move over to the bottom one. With the bottom one broken free, we'll go ahead and remove this one all the way. Go ahead and set the guide pin to the side. Now we can go ahead and remove the top one all the way. We'll go ahead and pull the top one out. I'm just going to use some small pliers for this one. Now with that off, we can go ahead and pull our caliper off of the carrier bracket. On the Volvo, the pads are clipped onto both ends, both the outboard and the inboard. We can go ahead and pop the outboard now while we have it here. And we'll go ahead and set that to the side. We'll go ahead and leave our inboard pad on for now. We'll go ahead and use that later when we compress our piston all the way in. But for now, let's go ahead and hang it off the coil spring with our caliper hook. And the main goal here is to not leave any tension on your brake line. You don't want it to hang from there, whether it's steel, braided, or rubber. You don't want to put any weight on that when you hang the caliper. Now we have our caliper off, we can go ahead and work on removing our caliper carrier. This one's held on by 2 18mm bolts. We'll break that one free. Then we'll go ahead and break the bottom one free. And now we should be able to remove them by hand. And then we can go ahead and remove the top one by hand. All right, now we have our caliper carrier off. The next thing we want to do is work on removing our rotor. So we have our set screw, which for this car is a 10mm hex. As you can see, our rotor is stuck onto the hub. Take out the BFH. Couple whacks. Didn't come out. One thing you can do for your vehicle if you're equipped with lug bolts, you can throw it in one lug bolt to keep it from falling on your foot or your face, and then give it a couple more whacks. And simply remove the lug bolt and remove the brake disc. Now we have the brake disc off. Our next step is going to be to clean the corrosion off of our wheel hub and prepare it for our new brake disc. I'm going to use a wire wheel attachment on a drill for this hub. Now with that cleaned off, we can hit it with some brake clean. I'm going to go ahead and give it a wipe down for any last debris that is stuck on there. And then we'll go ahead and apply our anti-corrosion paste, in this case some liquid moly. Now with our hub all ready to go, we can go ahead and install our new brake disc. Again, you always want to make sure your hands are somewhat clean if you're handling a coated disc. The last thing you want to do is have to hit it with any brake clean and ruin the protective surface. Once you have that, you want to line up your set screw hole. And then to keep that set screw from seizing into the rotor, do a little bit of paste there where it bottoms out. Then we can go ahead and snug it down properly. Make sure you torque them to spec. Most set screws you're looking at anywhere between 6 to 16 Newton meters. Now with that, you're going to want to go ahead and reinstall your caliper hanger. However, you want to make sure you clean off the grooves where the pads ride. On some vehicles, the anti-rattle clip is also located on these areas right here versus the outside of the caliper, so make sure you clean that up well. We'll take the wire wheel, hit it with the wire wheel a bit, and then some brake clean, and it should be good to go. The XC90 uses torque to yield bolts for the caliper carrier, so we're going to go ahead and replace those with some fresh units. These also have some thread locker pre-applied on them, so we'll go ahead and get that ready for install. Might get a little bit tight if you have some thread lock on your threads. And then with torque to yield bolts, you usually have to torque them down to a required spec and then give them an additional turn. As an example, these require 106 Newton meters plus 60 degrees. Since we don't have an angle tool here for this, I'm just going to go ahead and mark them with a paint pen and then try to rotate them about 60 degrees, which will be less than a quarter turn. Now we have our caliper carrier situated. We're going to go ahead and get our caliper ready for its new brake pads. So I'm going to go ahead and unhook it. I'll grab my piston retractor tool and we'll get to it. Now in some vehicles you have a front face on the caliper like we do on this one. And for this situation, even though it's a single piston caliper, we wouldn't necessarily be able to use this tool properly. So sometimes you can use a C-clamp, which the threaded portion can go through here. The C part of the body can go around the outside. In other situations, you can use a spreader like the one that I have here, which is one for like a multiple piston caliper. You have a piston on the outboard side and a piston on the inboard side. In this case, this will work great for this application. We'll go ahead and slide it in there. Once your tool bottoms out, the piston should be all the way in. If you have a hard time compressing your piston ever, then more than likely there's an issue with your caliper. But with that off, we can see our piston is all the way in. It looks really nice and clean. We're going to go ahead and get our new pads and load them up into the caliper. Now, while this Volvo isn't equipped with brake pad wear sensors, neither built into the pad nor external, the back of the pads are different. While the ears may be the same, they have two different clips. You want to note that when you pull yours apart always. In our case, the larger clip is going to go into the piston bore and the smaller one is going to go onto the exterior side or the outboard portion of the caliper. You can see the small notch where our anti-rattle clip clips into on the outboard pad. Always a great idea to lubricate the tabs before you insert them into the caliper or the piston. Just keeps them from seizing on in the long run. Also give the ears a small dabble while we're here. Then we'll do the same with the outboard pad. Now that our brake pads are loaded up, we can go ahead and place our caliper back onto our caliper carrier. If you get to this point and your caliper will not go on, more than likely you have not compressed the piston all the way in. So just keep that in mind whenever you're doing brakes on any vehicle. We have our guide pins cleaned up, ready to install. Two things to know, on some vehicles, they can be different lengths. You want to make sure you know which one is which before you reinstall them. Another thing that I'll leave up to you, my good people, is if you want to lubricate these or not before they go in. I'm going to use a little bit of liquid moly ceramic paste before I reinstall them. A lot of people like to install them dry. It's an age-old battle on the internet. I'll let you be the judge of that one though. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten down our guide pin bolts. Or I snug that one all the way up. I'll make sure I can get the top one in as well. With both of those snugged up, then you're going to want to go ahead and torque them down properly. All right. With those tightened down, we can go ahead and reinstall our caps on our dust boots. That way no debris gets in here and it doesn't jam up the caliper when it actuates in and out. And getting towards the end, now we have to reinstall our anti-rattle clip. So you can see the caliper moves around quite a bit without it. So that's there to avoid this from happening, keeping your brakes from being loud and noisy, all that good stuff. This one we're going to go ahead and feed it in. Make sure each ear is underneath the caliper carrier bracket on either side. There we go. It's nice and even. You heard it clip into the back bracket of the outboard pad. Should be good to go. The last thing for you to do is obviously put your wheel back on, torque the lug bolts or lug nuts, and go for a test drive. And most importantly, don't forget to pump the brake pedal a few times before driving. And with that, my good people, that is going to conclude this DIY for today. Overall, a really straightforward job on the P2. Again, just make sure you know which brake disc size you need for your Volvo. You should be good to go. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions and comments on what we did today, or there's a specific DIY you want to see us do on the P2 XC90 chassis, leave it in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.